Hello, good evening, everyone. We'll start our class in 2 minutes. You all can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So for the last class, I sent you the video for everyone. All you can see the YouTube link. So if you have any question, please go over those videos and take a look at that. If you don't clear any stuff, let me know so that I can go over a little more stuff one more time for the previous class. Then I can proceed with that. Else I can start with the next topic from today. And I also forwarded one email where you can see most of the slides I cover in the last class, so that you can also take a look at that, study those document, just to get some idea how that business requirement look like, or what type of documents you can receive once you can get into the job in the first phase. All right, I don't waste any time, so let's start with that. So the previous class, the first class, we basically cover what? We basically cover how that SDLC lifecycle work, right? So I'm just gonna give you a very high level thought how that's gonna work. So once the business or the clients uh, send the requirement, or based on their wants, they can make the requirements, right? So what is the business requirements they're going to make it? They're going to create some of the documents which call business requirement documents, or BRD, or functional requirement document, which is FRD. So functional requirement document, business requirement document, use case, or they're going to create the business applications flow, right? So who's going to create those document? The business analyst in the company, they're going to create those document. After creating those document, they're going to send this both document to the developers and the QA. So once they have the document, so developer basically start working to build the application. Then once the application is built, then they're going to send it to the QA. Then QA is going to validate that based on the business requirement document, functional requirement document, or the use cases. Then once the QA say everything looks good, then we're gonna push it to the production, or it's gonna deploy to the production. So once it's in the production, after that, the maintenance team basically maintain that application. So this is the simple way we can explain to SDLC. So I left over in the last class basically with this application flow. So I'll just little bit go over this application flow, how this is going to work. As I told you, it is similar type of application like a Uber and Lyft. So all you can see here, this is the application name is rideshare. Let's say I consider this application as a Uber, right? So once I log in to the Uber, or before I log into the Uber, what I can see the home page. So if I can give you this document, first thing first in the office, like once you go to the office, like you have this document with you and you need to understand how that application flow works. So if I can give it to you, you need to see here, they say they have one home page. So I need to think about it. Okay, whatever the application I'm gonna work with that, they might have one home page, right? After the home page, what I need to do, or what I can see here, I can see here basically find a ride, right? So once I can click or proceed with that functionality or option, they're gonna pop up with some stuff. Which is these two stuff is coming up? One, they say the secure ride, another one is general ride. So after that, as I told you, whenever you can see any diamond shape on the document, this is the time to make a decision, or you'll have to find the two ways, split it off out of that functionality. So here, basically they said, once I can see this, out of these two, right, I can pick one. Either first one or the second one. Let's say I pick the general ride. So what happened with the general ride? If I can pick the general ride, it's gonna go to seeing the another landing page with saying that like maybe available rides in some X mile. And if I can say, okay, I don't want the general ride, what I need to do, I wanna go for the secure ride. The secure ride also need to have some type of functionalities called background check. So after that background check, it's gonna go to or land to the again for the available ride in X mile page. So these are basically the landing pages. This all you can see here, where I can click on that. These are basically the landing page. And these are the things, if you can see, where I can select or make a decision, those are basically the functionality. Based on this type of functionality, we're going to validate once we do have the documentation. Let's say we can come over here directly. To the login page. So that's going to be more easiest way or easier to understand for you all. Let's say the login page. So since we are going to use Facebook, Amazon, Google, Gmail, wherever you're going to use it, right? So all the application need to have the login page. Without login, we cannot get into the application. Similar way as a Uber, Lyft, you need to log in first. So login is basically a very common functionalities for all of the application, and once we're gonna work with the create or not create the test case and working with the test case functionalities, we're starting with the login functionality first, then we can proceed with the other functionality. So that's what I'm going to tell you. So like this is very basic stuff. So this all are the landing pages you can see, right? So for the login, just think about it. For the login, what do we have in the login? Normally we're going to put some of the username on it. Then we can need to put the password. then we can create the password. If we can forget the password, we can change this password, right? If we forget the username, then also we can find the username based on the previous question or the way we set up the account. Even if we can create the account in Facebook, Google, Amazon, wherever, right? We need to put some of the information in our end, which is name, username, date of birth, location. Sometimes it depends. Then you need to add the credit card information. So it's a lot of things involved with it. So each stuff is called the functionality, right? So we're gonna go over those things since later on. So this is basically nothing but the business process flow. So if you can have something like that, once you'll be in the office in the first day, or like, once the project will be started. So you don't need to worry about anything. All you need to know, just need to understand how that flow works, or what is the business want to build that particular application. So this is just a sample. All right. Okay. So next thing is, for the software development lifecycle, what is software development lifecycle? It's just a process to build the application, right? 1 second, I think someone need to mute. Okay. So what is software development lifecycle? Software development lifecycle, or SDLC, is just a basic process how we can build the application. Now, each and every time once you're gonna work with the company or any particular projects to implement or execute that software development lifecycle, we need to apply some of the methodologies. So methodologies is nothing but to making sure that whenever we're going to build any application, that the process need to be very clear to each and every team. So that's why we're going to implement, or we're going to utilize some of the methodologies to run that SDLC process. So one of the most popular methodologies is Agile or the Scrum methodologies, or we can call the Agile. Or we can call the Agile. Can someone mute yourself? I don't know, like, who's gonna. Okay, sorry for that. So whenever we're gonna develop any application, we need to apply those methodologies to making sure that each and every team are involved or participate their own work and complete that work in on time. So whenever you start working with any of the projects, the timing is most important, right? Why the timing is most important? Because each and every projects, the company is apply those projects based on their budgets. So once the budgets means money is coming from, so they're only focused on the timing and implement that projects. So let's say like it's a small project's duration for 3 months, and within that 3 months, all of the team need to involve and complete their work so that the project will go successfully. So as I told you, the Scrum or Agile, this is a very popular methodologies. Most of the company in USA, they're applying that. Now, what is the percentage of using these methodologies in the company? As I can see, for my last 12 or 15 years experience, 90% of the company, 90% plus, I would say, company, they're gonna use these methodologies, the Agile or the Scrum methodologies. This is very popular one. Out of this, they have the other methodologies. which is waterfall and the other stuff. So I'm going to cover those things as well. But mostly once you'll be getting to the job, you'll definitely see they're going to use that agile methodologies. Why we're going to use that, why they're going to use, all the companies going to use the agile methodologies, because it's very easy to maintain and they can make the quick changes on their requirement. So let's start with how that agile works. So to work the agile, basically, they have the product owner. Who is the product owner? The product owner is basically the person. So the product owner will be one product owner for each and every projects. Remember that. So the product owner, basically, they're going to start the projects, and they are basically the person who is going to communicate with the business or the clients based on what the projects we're going to work with. So he's the guy basically has all the information about the projects, and he is the person basically going to communicate with the different team. So after the product owner, we do have the different team, right? So what are the teams involved in the SDLC or to develop a software? So there are most three common team we have, right? One is developer, basically, who is going to develop the application. Second one is QA. After develop that application, someone need to validate, which is a QA is going to validate that. And the other person is basically the engineering and the support team, right? And they have the product owner here, and they have the business analyst. So without these two teams, there is a no way they can develop the application. That's why development and the QA are most popular job in IT. And the ratio, I would say, let's say like in one team, if we have like 4 developers, they want at least 2 QA for that. That's how they're going to hire each and every company. That's why even if in the market, if you can see the more developer jobs and a little bit less QA jobs, but the development is not that easy, but the QA is easy. That's why like we're here, we are learning this QA and we're trying to get into the QA field. All right, now how that agile works. So agile basically work starting with the sprint backlog. Now the question is, what is a sprint backlog? We don't know anything about the sprint backlog. Before the sprint backlog, I'll just a little bit cover on the product backlog. Let's say I give you the requirements in the first day. Let me pull that document so that it's going to be easier for you to understand exactly from where we are going to. Business requirement document. So this is the another document, like I shown to you in the last class, right? So if I can straight go to the requirements, so here's the page the requirement starts, right? Let more up, I think. Okay. You see business and functional requirements. So this is one requirement. What is called the one requirement? First requirement, this is BR001. This is the number, they just put it. And like, it depends on the projects and the company, they use the different numbers, right? So they said the online banking login page. right? So this is my first requirement. And this first requirement, where I can see here, basically, this is the PVI, which is product backlog item. So if I can go back to this, you see the product owner, right? So the product owner, basically what they're gonna do based on this document, where you can see in the first functionality, they're gonna make a story, which is they're gonna put PVI number 001 and make that requirement or make that functionality in the first number one, and making sure that like people can, whoever work in the team, they can start working with this functionality, which is online banking login page. So online banking login page, they put as like PVI 001. So if I can go back here, I see the product backlog item. So similar way, I have a lot of functionalities in these projects, right? So the display knowledge base articles, search results, they have a lot of it. So they're going to include basically in the product backlog item, all of it listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to, it depends on the projects, 100, 200, 300, we don't know. Or mostly like if it's a small projects in 2 to 3 months or 3 to 6 months projects, they might be have like 100 functionalities or 150 functionalities. So they're going to basically list it each and every work, and they call that each item as a product backlog item. So once I do have that product backlog item settle in where they're going to put this one in either DevOps or Jira. So we're going to cover these things later on. We're going to show you all that tools, how that tools looks like, how that's going to work, but we're going to cover these things later, either DevOps and the Jira. So based on that DevOps and the Jira, they added each functionalities or each item of work, and they're going to call that as a product backlog item or PBI. So once I can see, or once I can have 100 PVI for a small projects, then we're going to start working with the sprint work, or we're going to start or pull some item out of this PVI list and start working with this each item, right? So once I have the PVI listed here, basically, and all you guys can do the same thing once you'll be in the job. So you're gonna be having one meeting, which is sprint planning meeting. And that meeting basically involved with the product owner, business analyst, developers, and the QA, trying to discuss about most of the functionality. And either product owner or the business analyst people, they are going to discuss how that particular functionality works or what exactly the business or the client wants, so that developer and the QA, they are going to understand basically how am I going to work for that particular functionality or for that particular item. So once we have that sprint planning meeting, basically we are going to pull out of that 100 items or out of that 100 product backlog item, we're going to select, let's say, 5 items in the first phase, right? Now, out of that 100, what are you going to do basically? Out of that 100, we're going to select 5 for the first sprint. As you can see here, sprint backlog. So out of that 100, we are going to select only 5. Why we are going to select only 5? Because the way that agile methodology works, basically, we're not going to done all the work together, and it's not possible because this 100 PVI worth of 6 months of work, let's say, or 4 months of work, right? So we need to split those whole projects or whole work item as a small phases so that developers and the QA can work together and complete that small goals to finish that projects. So let's say I'm going to start working with this 5 backlog item or PVI item, right? So my concern is to be in one sprint or sprint one, I need to complete all these 5 items. So who's going to work in basically in this sprint? As I told you, developer and the QA. So developer need to focus on only these 5 items. They're going to develop and they're going to send it to QA. And QA need to validate and close these 5 items, making sure that, okay, all five items or all 5 functionalities will be done in 1 or 2 weeks. Now, this is the most common questions in the interview. Have you ever worked on the agile methodologies? The answer would be yes. What is the sprint duration? The normal sprint duration would be 2 to 3 weeks. This is a very standard. If it's the big projects, it's 3 weeks. If it's the small projects or the regular company, they're going to follow the 2 weeks. So either you can say 2 weeks, the standard will be 2 weeks. But if they're going to it depends on the interviewer who's going to take your interview. They might say, okay, it's at 2 weeks, right? So can you explain how that Scrum methodologies work, or how did you work with that? Or is it the small projects you're working with that's why it's a 2 weeks sprint? Or have you ever worked on the bigger project, which is a 3 weeks sprint as well? So we'll exactly tell you how you're gonna manipulate those questions. Like once the interview phase or the job placement phase is coming up, we're gonna discuss with that. But as of now, all you need to know, the standard is 2 to 3 weeks, but 90% company, they're going to follow for the 2 weeks sprint work. And if it's a very big projects, they're going to follow with the 3 weeks sprint. So these 2 weeks, basically, developer and the QA, they are parallelly working with to complete this 5 functionality out of this 100. Now, if you can see 2 weeks, 5, right? So I need how many sprint to complete the whole projects? 20 sprint, right? If I can have 20 sprint, I divided by 100 divided by 5, which is 20, and 2 weeks for each sprint, right? So it's gonna be 40 weeks need to done that projects. So that's how they calculate the backlog item, or they're gonna do the budgets based on the projects and based on the timeline. They're going to work with this. So each and every company, they follow this. Now for the sprint work, as you can see, as I told you, so here basically where I'm going to start with, I'm going to start with first sprint, which is called sprint 1. Normally the second sprint called sprint 2, then sprint 3, sprint 4, sprint 5, sprint 6. Let's go up to how many sprints they wanted, they can work with that. All right, so here I have 100 backlog item. I started with the first sprint with the 5 item, right? Now this 5 item, you can see 1 to 4 week sprint. So I'm going to consider as a 2 weeks of sprint, right? So 2 weeks of a sprint, then basically once in these 2 weeks, they're gonna done with this 5 item, the sprint 1 is done. Then out of this 100 item, again I pick 5 item for sprint 2, and I'm gonna do for 2 weeks work, and similar way I'm gonna done with this. So out of this 100, in 2 sprint, which is 4 weeks of worth of time, I'm able to complete 10 items. So similar way, they need to reach out to the 100, right? Now, this is the process, or this is the way they're going to implement or utilize this process to complete the work. Now, how this is going to help? This is going to help only because of it's a quick change and a quick fix. Why is a quick change and a quick fix? Let's go over, like I do have here 100 product backlog item, right? I start with 5 in the first. Then I have 95 left, the PVI or the functionalities left. Once I can done with this 5, right? Then sometimes business or the clients, they're gonna come up and saying, okay, I think like, the product item number PVI number 6, whatever you have in the list, basically, we need to make a little changes on that. That's okay. You can make or update the functionality. Then they're gonna add again here. So this is the continuous process to build or change the functionality so that developer and the QA can easily work with the application. That's why most of the company, they're going to use the agile methodologies so that they can keep up with the work and the business can continuously make changes or update on their requirements. That's why it's most popular in all of the workplace. Now, once you work with the agile, so agile has some type of process. What is the process basically? So once you get into the office, the most first day you're going to start with some of the meeting. So most common meeting is like the planning meeting, because without the planning, sprint planning meeting, you're not going to understand anything. So this meeting basically covered to inform you what are the product backlog items they have, what are the functionalities they're going to work with it, what type of project it will be, and the duration of the project. So they're going to discuss everything with that. And if you work with the agile methodologies in that company, you do have it each and every day, the stand-up meeting or daily scrum meeting, daily stand-up scrum meeting, which is this. So this is the meeting basically you need to attend every day once you'll be in the office in the first day in the morning. So this is the purpose. What is the purpose of this meeting? So the common purpose of this meeting, basically, three things they are going to cover in this meeting. So one thing, the first one is what you have done yesterday. Second thing is what you're going to do today. And third thing is if you have any impediments, which is like if you have any issues, blockage, or anything else or not. So each team, the developers, each and every person in the development team, they're going to discuss with the whole team. So, okay, I have done something yesterday, which is this functionality I worked on yesterday. I'm going to planning to do these things today. And I do have these impairments, this blockage, or I don't have any impairments, or I have no blockage. So as a developers, each developer, as a QA, each QA, they're going to attend that meeting. And who run that meeting? The product owner or Scrum Master. This is the guy basically running the meeting. And this is the guy basically getting updates from each and every person from that team to making sure that how that project is going through. So if it's any blockage, or like if it's on any issues to understand anything, or if you have anything goes wrong with that project or not, so the product owner can track that projects. So any questions about Scrum or Agile methodologies? No questions? You can feel free to ask if you have any questions. All right, if you guys don't have any questions, I will proceed with the another slide. All right, so as I told you, right, the Scrum and the Agile is the same thing. It's just like, the methodologies we're going to apply. And I told you, it's the 2 weeks of a sprint. So for the 2 weeks of a sprint, as you can see in here too, there's a 14 days sprint. In this 14 days of a sprint, who is working with this in 14 days? You see, there is some person inside of this cycle, which is basically they're working with the developers and the QA, project manager, and Scrum Master or the product owner, right? So easiest way to build this process, as I told you, most of the companies follows for the 2 weeks of a sprint, which is 14 days. So 14 days, they're gonna work with particular functionalities, or from the PVI, if I can consider 5 PVI for one sprint, this is the things coming up. So it's easily they can grab that 5 functionalities or product backlog item. They can do quick analyze, they can build that design, they can code, and they can test. So analyze, basically QA and developers, both they need to analyze the functionality or the product backlog item. Design is given by the different team, right? Business analyst or the architecture team, they're going to provide you the design or the other documents like the business requirement document, functional requirement document, use cases, or UI specs. So they're going to give it to you. And after that, the coding part is coming from the developers, and the testing part is coming from the QA. So this is like very small pictures you can see for one sprint work. So how they're going to process or how they're going to do with this. Now, to complete the projects, you see, small sprint, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is basically the model once they're going to finish one particular project. So this one sprint for 2 weeks. Similar way, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks worth of work, 2 weeks worth of work, 2 weeks worth of work. So after finishing or successfully complete all of the sprint, the final product or the application is ready to deploy to the production. So here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the 9 sprint, basically 5 multiplied by 9, which is 45 stories they can able to complete. Let's say small projects, 45 stories should be fine. Then once all the sprint work is done, then they can push to the production. So this is how the Scrum or the Agile work. Now, other than Scrum and Agile, we do have other methodologies, which is not much popular, but you need to know how that works. So this is another methodology is called waterfall. So difference between waterfall and the Agile. This is another interview question. What's the difference between Agile and the waterfall methodologies? So the good thing in Agile methodologies, there's a continuous change, right? Let's say like if I finish first 5 PVI backlog item, like a product backlog item, then business come and decide, okay, I'm going to update the 6 number of functionalities. They can easily update that and send it to the QA and the developers so that we can work with that. But the problem in waterfall, the waterfall comes with the first phase, which is analyze, design. Once the analyze and designing part is done and the document is ready, okay, they're going to send that document to developer and the QA. But the business or the clients cannot change that document. They cannot change that document. That's why waterfall is not much popular, because the way it works basically, let's say client and the business or the clients, they decided to build the application. They're going to analyze their part. Based on the analyze, they create the design and add all product backlog item. So once they add all product backlog item, straight ahead is going to be starting with the developer and the QA phase. But middle of the projects, they're not going to come and say, oh, I made a mistake, or I need to add few more functionalities. Can you please add those? No. In the waterfall, we cannot do that. That's why the waterfall methodology is not that much popular. But here's the thing, or the catch. Waterfall methodologies is very popular methodologies only for the government projects. I used to work with the government in 2013-14 years. So it's been like the two years on 2013-14. I was working with the government project. So that time they're going to use the waterfall methodologies. Why I'm saying that the government only, or most likely to use this, because most of the government projects, they're gonna set all the functionalities before they implement that application. Let's say the state benefits, right? For, let's say, social security benefits. So the social security benefits, they have decided how that application should work, right? Based on that, they do the analyze, they do the design, and they said, okay, we are done with analyze part, we're done with the designing part, we know exactly what we want. They just straight ahead send it to the development and the QA. So they're not gonna change or update anything on that particular application. So once this A and D phase is done, they just close out. Then the development and the QA starts. That's why the government projects most likely, or they're pretty much use this waterfall, because their set of functionalities are defined before they start the projects. So they cannot add or change anything. But normally, let's say the other company without the government projects, Facebook or whatever you can see in our companies, right? Like the existing company, they love to change their functionalities because everything is customer based. Why I'm saying the customer base, let's say like they start one projects like the Facebook, right? They start something with very simple functionality, right? After working that functionality, business say, oh, you know what? I think this is not the right way. We can make changes or add few more stuff on it so that customer can more attractive and use the Facebook. Let's make changes on that. That's why they are not going to use the waterfall. They are gonna use the Scrum so that they can continuous develop that application based on their requirements. That's why there's love to use the Scrum. So waterfall is basically only for the government projects, and it's a very few chances once you will be in the market, you can see this waterfall methodologies. But if you can see the waterfall methodologies, you need to know like how it's gonna work. Okay, so after waterfall methodologies, we're gonna cover two more methodologies today, which is prototyping methodologies. So prototyping methodologies is basically very scratch methodology. They're going to start from very scratch of the projects. Let's say some of the projects they're going to work with a trial basis, right? I don't know yet how that project should be look like. You know what? Let's start with something at least, and let's see how it goes. If we feel like it's really work for the market, then we can proceed with that. So this is like the prototyping. So they're gonna just laying out one of the feature for that particular application, and they're gonna just implement quickly and see how the response they're gonna getting back from the business. So once they can have the requirement, they just have the quick design. It's a very quick design. Then after that, they just build the prototype, just very quick layout. Then they send it for the designing phase. After that, coding, then testing, then maintenance. And if something wrong with the maintenance, or if they feel like, okay, okay, something is not working, let's go back to the QA. QA said, okay, I might need to work with this. And QA said, okay, if you make something changes, or if you feel like it's not going to work, they report to the developers. Developers say, you know what? I think this is not the right design. The first design you gave it to me, which may not be right. So you know what? They're gonna back to the designing team or the business analyst saying that, can you redesign that functionality or this process again and give it to us again? We can code again, test it, and put in the production. So prototyping is like very, I would say not even 1% of the projects they're going to use it, but you need to know if you, by any chance, like if any type of like, interviewer asks you any questions like, okay, without or like, I know like most of them I know like, the waterfall and the agile is the most popular methodologies, but out of these two methodologies, have you ever worked on the different type of methodologies like the prototyping or the V-shaped methodologies? Have you worked on it or not? So at least you guys have some idea how that's going to work. So another one I'm going to cover today, which is V-shaped methodologies, as I told you, right? So the V-shaped methodologies is basically nothing but the similar way. They're going to start working with the same phase, as you see, the requirement. Then again, the high level design, they build some of the low level design. And once they have the requirement, they're just going to check the acceptance or the system testing. What is acceptance or the system testing? This is, I'm going to cover later on, but I can tell you just a very initial phase of that. So let's say I have the requirements ready, right? And I give it to the QA and the developers. I say, can you quickly check is that the system is working fine or not? They say it's okay. Okay, good. Now, second phase, they say, okay, if the system is working fine, you know what? Let's work with the very high level design and let's see. This once they have the high level design is ready, basically parallelly, they're gonna work with the integration testing. So integration testing is a different phase of testing. That's one I'm also covering in the later some class, like once I work with the create of test cases and all those things, that time we're going to cover with that. But as of now, you all need to know, just like the high level design, once they have it, they perform the integration testing. So integration testing is basically integrate with what, let's say like I have one of the projects called like, let's say the Facebook, right? So once I log in, right? So after the login, what I can see the landing pages on my Facebook, like the home page. Excuse me. So if I can build the functionality separate way, which is like the login functionality and the landing page. So two different things, right? But two different things is connect with each other. Without login, I cannot see the landing landing page or the home page of the Facebook. So once I have two different functionality coming up in one phase or integrate with two different functionality in one, that time you need to perform the integration testing. But I'll discuss these things since later on, like when you have the different type of testing phases coming up. Then they have the low-level design, basically the similar way, which is part from the unit test. Unit test done by the developers. You don't need to focus on this much, but I can cover this on later on. Then they come up with the implementation. So V-shape basically is not that much popular. Even like I would say like in my last 15 years of IT experience, I never worked on V-shape. So it's very like, it's just like, very decision making in the first phase of the projects. They might need to think about that, or some type of the system validation. They're going to implement the V-shape. But in the QA, once you can work with the projects, basically your focus will be for the application side. So the application side, once you're going to work with that, you must face the agile or Scrum, or very few chances to get in the waterfall. So agile is your most common and most popular methodologies they're going to use day-to-day life. Okay, so we already covered the methodologies. Anyone has any questions?
Yes, please. I have a question.
Go ahead.
For the waterfall methodology, the client cannot change the document. So if they want to change anything in the future, they should go all over the procedure again, like they have to put the design again and do the coding, like
Yes, so that I got your questions basically. So let's say like I start working with government projects, right? Which is like the waterfall, I apply that. Now I implement that projects. After that, I need to update or change anything. That time they're gonna make that project, let's say the first one, make as the phase 1 and the project phase 2. So they need to work with the whole different projects. They cannot add with project 1.
Okay, got you. So that takes more time than any other project.
Exactly. That's why the waterfall is not much popular in the market.
And for the V-shape methodology, the requirements they have to see if for the acceptance and system testing. Does it mean that the system is already there and we are like adding a new page or a new something?
Right. It's just a quick test. Correct.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Any other question you guys have? Anyone has any type of questions about the methodologies? I would say like your 90% focus would be on the agile. I believe I sent you that document. If I couldn't send that document, but I'll double check with that. I'm pretty sure I can send the document, but try to understand that Scrum and Scrum or agile methodologies very clearly, because I'm gonna cover a few stuff today in here, and there are some of the interview questions coming up from this. So how that product backlog item work, then how you define the product backlog items, or how gonna start with the agile, or the duration of the sprint, then what are the team involved, or is it the quick changes on the functionalities is possible in Scrum or the agile or not? So those are the interview questions coming out of this Scrum. So take a look. If you have any questions, let me know in the next class before I start, so that I can go over that agile or the Scrum methodologies one more time quickly. Okay. All right. So after this, we're gonna jump into, what time is it? Okay, we still have 7 minutes. Okay. We're gonna jump into the new topic today, which is software testing lifecycle. I'm not gonna go a lot of depth on it, but I'm just gonna start with that. So we have worked with software testing lifecycle before, right? So the software development lifecycle before in the first class. So part of the software development, we have one feature called testing, which is basically QA is going to work with that. Now, as of today, this topic, before that, we are talking about software development lifecycle, which is like how to develop the software. Now we are only focusing on testing or QA. So QA is one of the phase in software development lifecycle, right? So once I am into the testing, testing has their own life cycle. So the testing life cycle or software testing life cycle, which is called STLC, that one is SDLC. This is STLC. So the STLC is a similar way. It's going to start from the requirement analysis. Based on the requirement analysis, then it's going to go to the next phase, which is test planning. Then we're going to work with the test case development, then environment setup, execution, and the test report. Okay, now I'm just going to cover quickly some stuff on it. Requirement analysis, right? I think I need to change the color. Requirement analysis. How I can get the requirement? Can anyone answer my questions in this phase just a little bit? Where I can get the requirement?
The client.
Basically, a business analyst, they get it from there, right?
Right. So from the client or the business, they're going to provide the requirements, and based on their requirements, business analyst is going to create or build some of the documents, which is business requirement document, functional requirement document, use case, or UI specs. So these are the most 4 common documents. I do have it in my hand. So once I have that document with me, I need to analyze the business requirement document, or based on like all 4 or 3, 2, it depends on the projects, right? Business requirement. I need to analyze this one first. So this is the phase where I'm going to analyze that. And based on my analysis, basically, I need to come up with some plan. What is my plan? I need to take a look at that. How many functionalities they have? How that functionality basically going to work? What are the dependency we have? What are the entrance criteria basically we have it on that application? What would be the exit criteria will be in that application? So the things I'm going to cover in here, basically I'm going to go over everything in the next class, but I'm just going to give you a very high level idea how it's going to work, right? So I need to get all the analysis done before I'm going to start that projects. So once I have the business requirement and my analysis part is done, the first thing first is I need to make some plan. So the plan is basically how I am going to test these requirements in the proper way. This is the phase I'm going to make that plan. So based on my planning, because they have the test case planning document, I'm going to cover in next class. But based on my planning, what I need to do, I need to come up with test case development. And as a QA, your work is this phase and this phase. This is the 2 most important things you need to do your day-to-day life in the office. You need to build or develop the test case either manually or use the automation script, and you need to execute that test case either manually or using automation. So once I have my plan ready, right, after that, I'm going to go ahead and develop the test case based on the requirement. Because the requirement document saying that exactly what are the functionalities need to cover for that particular projects. So my focus is to be, if I'm going to develop the test case, I'm going to focus on the requirement first. And out of that requirement, how are you going to develop the test case? We're going to have more class coming up next week, following week. We're going to work with this. So software testing lifecycle starts with the requirement. Then after requirement, we need to make a plan for the testing. So once the testing plan would be done, or test plan would be done, we're going to develop the test case. So after develop the test case, we need to set up the test environment. So test environment is another topic I need to cover, but the test environment is nothing but, if I can go to, okay, quick question to you guys. If I can go to one of the website here, basically, let's go to Google. This is google.com, right? So if I can go to the google.com, what is this environment? Can anyone tell me? I'm pretty sure some of you know this answer. This is a production environment, right? And what does this call? www.google.com.
URL.
This is the URL, right? So this is the URL, and this is the production environment. The similar way, Google has their own test environment, which may be www.google.test.com, something like that, or www.googletest.com. So domain is Google. As you can all know, this is the name of the domain, Google. And www.google.com, this is the URL. URL is basically point to that particular application. This is the web application, right? Facebook, Amazon, everything is a web application. Google, everything is web application. So as I told you in the first class, we do have like the two different type of application. One is desktop, another one is web application. So desktop application, basically you can see the icon in your desktop. But for the web application, I cannot see any icon here. How I can navigate or how I can get into that application? I need to put the URL in the IE or the browser so that I can get or hit that server. So basically this Google, they're gonna place that application in one server in their secure location. And all I need to do, if I have that internet access, I need to type that www.google.com so that I can hit their application to use it, okay? So this is called the production environment. This is the URL focusing on production environment. Similar way, once we have it here for the testing purpose, we cannot test the new thing in production. Why we cannot test that? Because if I do have here, I can build something in Google new feature, and every customer can see that. They said, okay, something is not working. What the heck is coming out of this? I never seen this before, right? So there's a lot of questions coming up. That's why they made the environment separate. So for developers who's going to work with their work, they're going to place that to the development environment. Once they build something on the development environment, they push to the QA environment. Then QA need to test that in their own environment. After that, they put the UAT, but I'm going to cover these things later. So UAT environment or the staging environment. So after the staging environment, if the business is satisfied with their requirements, business also be the tester at some point. I'm going to cover that one as well. So they validate in the staging environment or the UAT environment. Then they said, okay, I'm happy. Whatever I want, you guys did a very good job on it. Then they said like, okay, push that same code or functionality to the production, which is, you can see the www.google.com. Okay, so for the testing phase, basically, we need to set up the test environment for our own test. Then after that, whenever we can develop that particular test case, we need to execute that test case. Execute means the testing. You are going to testing. So basically, whatever the functionalities I already analyze, and based on that, I write the test case, or I develop the test case. That test case need to be tested in that QA environment, which is called the test case execution. And after that execution is done, or the testing is done, we need to generate a report with all of the functionalities of the PVI and saying that, okay, out of this 5, 4, or 10 functionalities, 6 of them are working, 4 of them are not working. So what is the process? If all of them are working, everything is good, we can push that code, already that code, to the production. Or if something is not working, then we need to report to the developer so that they can work, fix the problem, and send it back to the QA again. You can validate that again, then you can generate the report. Okay, I think that's all for today. I don't want to put more stuff on it. So if you guys have any questions so far, you can ask me. So this is the time you can ask the question, because I can wrap up the session in like a few minutes.
I have one question, like, suppose we have we got some test 10 functionalities, right?
Right.
So 6 of them are working and 4 of them are not working.
Yes.
So 6 of them are gonna push it to the for the
Production.
line.
Yeah.
And 4 of them we're gonna send it back to the developer, right?
Right.
So it's not like that we're gonna push all of them, like 10 of them, push it back to the developer.
It depends on the phase of the projects. If the business and your managers or the leaders, whoever working with that head of the projects, the project managers, they're okay with pushing that 6 functionalities, which is working fine. If they agree with to push it to the production, we can move forward with that. Or they can say they have the interdependent on each functionalities, right? Let's say you tested, let's say 3 functionalities you're working with that, right? One is login, one is like the Facebook, like one is login, one is adding the friends, and another one is post a photo, right? So out of that 3, login is working, and add a friend and post a photo is not working, right? If the leader says, or the business agreed, okay, we can only push the login functionalities to the production, that should be fine. Okay, if they say, okay, we can push it to the production, but there's a catch. Where's the catch is, if you say login is not working, but you tested add a friend and post a photo is working, right? So they have the dependent functionality, which is login in the first phase, because without login, you cannot get into the Facebook, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Even second 2 functionality is working fine, you cannot push that push the 2 functionality in the production, because you have the dependent or the dependency for the first functionality. So it depends on the phase of the projects, depends on what are the functionalities you are working with that. So it's all depends on it. But most likely based on the sprint work, if something is not working, they are trying to cover in one sprint, and each sprint making sure that all the functionality is working so that they can make a separate build and push to the production. So what is called build, that phase I'm going to come later on. So to answer your question, it depends on the projects, okay, depends on the functionality. If they have any dependency with those functionalities, they cannot push. If they don't have any dependency and the business want to push that functionality to the production, they can do that.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Iman. Right. And I want to thank you because you were making me understand very easily. Understand.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Anyone has any other questions before I wrap up the session today? Okay, if you guys don't have any questions, I'll just close the session today. So here's the thing. As I told you, we do have the weekend session. That's the discussion session, and we switch it back to, I think I decided first in the Saturday, we're going to work with that. But right now we decided to do it on Sunday. So since it's a very beginning of our training and you have little more time to read or understand this process. So this weekend, we don't have any discussion session, which is like the 7th of May. But we definitely have the discussion session on 21st of May, which is the next week, like the next weekend, not the week, sorry, next weekend we do have it, right? That's all for today, and you're not gonna get any weekend discussion session link until I would say like in 19. I'm gonna send it to you guys. And as I think like you guys are spoke with one of our another partner, which is called Rashu, so he's gonna take care of that weekend session. But I'll also joining in that session. Maybe like he's gonna be the person, basically he's gonna take care of everything on the weekend session and discussion, so that like he has some ideas, knowledge, and like he has some experience to like how it's gonna work, and you have like the different like examples, understanding, and this and that. So like you have like the more people involved with that in the discussion session, so that like you guys can talk as a team. If you have understand something, someone don't understand something, so like you can discuss as a team, so that like you can clear those topic. And as I told you that the weekend session is not the mandatory, but we do have it. So we just want to keep you all in one track, so that like you're not gonna be like, okay, just done with the training means it's done. It's not like that. So I want you all get into the real job market. I just want to make sure that like each and every topic is very clear for you guys, and like you're like you're fit for the market. That's how like I'm trying, like planning to put you in the market. So make sure that like you have some, at least join for like 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever, because the discussion session may go for like 2 hours, 3 hours. It depends on like I'll just put the time for like 2 to 3 hours, but you just join. As long as you guys are finished with that, we just wrap up the session for like the weekend session. We can just wrap it up.
So
But
we'll
yeah,
have
that's
a-
all for, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, we'll have a discussion this Sunday, 7th or no, like 7, 10 to 12, we decided or no?
So this Sunday I will not do it, because only
Okay.
this the topic I had covered, I think like it's just a beginning,
That's right.
so
yeah.
you don't have much questions, but like for the next weekend, for sure you're gonna come up with a lot of questions,
Okay.
because we're gonna cover a lot of few more stuff on it. So
Yeah, no
once you
problem.
add up with things, yeah.
Thank you, Imran bhai.
Okay. No problem, brother. So yeah, so I think that's all for tonight, and you're gonna get the video link at the end of the night. Sometimes I'll upload in and the YouTube. So, and if you have any other question, anything, just reach out to me anytime. So it shouldn't be any problem. All right. So that's all for tonight, and you guys have a good weekend. I'll talk to you in next class on Tuesday at 8. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.